This week, she was officially crowned the 2024 Democrat nominee. And now there's a chance she could be the next Commander-in-Chief.
I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
But after being the Vice President for almost 4 years now, there are still many questions surrounding Harris. So who exactly is Kamala Harris? Sky News Digital Originals presents The Accidental President. In 2019, Kamala Harris's voting record scored her the title as the most liberal senator in America, which, if elected, could make her the most left-leaning president in American history.
You're very different in the policies that you've supported in the past. You're considered the most liberal United States senator.
Somebody said that, and it actually was Mike Pence on the debate stage, but...
Yeah, well, actually, the nonpartisan GovTrack has rated you as the most liberal senator.
That accolade was awarded after she had a more extreme voting record and viewpoint than her political colleagues.
Equality suggests often everybody should get the same thing. Well, that often assumes everybody started out in the same place, as opposed to equity, which is everyone should end up in the same place. And if you then understand not everybody started out in the same place, you understand some people need more. So we all end up in the same place.
Good afternoon. I want to welcome these leaders for coming in to have this very important discussion about some of the most pressing issues of our time. I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her. I am a woman sitting at the table wearing a blue suit. And
thank you guys. And my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
She, her, and her? Mine too.
All right.
There's been a large amount of scrutiny on the Vice President's handling of the southern border. In 2021, President Joe Biden put Harris in charge of looking after the border. And well, things went from bad to much, much worse.
I've asked her, the VP today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle and the countries that help. We're going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks, stemming the migration to our southern border.
The reality is, under the Biden-Harris administration, the humanitarian crisis at the southern border has escalated. The number of gotaways has dramatically increased, leading to major safety concerns across the United States. Vice President Harris has also had a significantly left-leaning approach to tackling the migrant crisis over the years.
I am a career prosecutor. I've personally prosecuted everything from low-level offenses to homicides. I have seen some of the worst of crime, some of the worst of criminals. An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal, and we have to correct course on this conversation in our country. It is a serious mistake to conflate criminal justice policy with immigration policy, as if they are the same thing. They are not. I have personally prosecuted everything from low-level offenses to homicides. I know what a crime looks like. And I will tell you, an undocumented immigrant is not a criminal.
California Senator Kamala Harris is blasting President Trump's revamped executive order on refugees and immigration. A dramatic increase in deportations is expected once it's signed. During a forum in Southern California today, Senator Harris called the policies too extreme.
There's one interpretation that suggests if someone is suspected of committing a crime, then there's a basis for ICE to act. Well, that's outrageous. That's ridiculous. That's crazy.
An issue plaguing Americans at the moment is the cost of living crisis. Under the Biden-Harris administration, grocery prices have shot up 21%, part of an inflation surge that has raised overall costs by about 19%. So as the election day nears, Kamala Harris has unveiled an economic policy that proposes a ban on price gouging by food suppliers and grocery stores. But this proposal has raised concerns about its potential impact on inflation and national debt.
She got panned from the left and the right on what was universally decried as gimmicks, a gimmicky speech on Friday about how she, with the hand of the federal government, is going to single-handedly change prices at the grocery store. Meanwhile, the grocers generally have a 1% profit margin. How is she going to stop them from their price gouging, make them operate at a loss? That's not what's going to happen. Her inflation is what's caused increased prices at the grocery store and the gas pump. And she's trying to dodge it by saying it's these evil corporate greedy people who are trying to exploit the poor working class. That's not what happened. They spent too much. The Fed printed too much money and they drove up the cash influx in the economy, which leads to inflation. That's what we're dealing with over here. And she can blame it on the evil corporate greedy people all she wants, but there's only so much she could clip the wings of the grocers without making groceries disappear. So that's number one. Then she wants to offer everybody, first-time home buyers, a $25,000 mortgage down payment. Okay, we're already suffering from a housing shortage. And, I said this on my show yesterday, you give everybody who's buying a house for a first time $25,000 to buy a house, you know what's going to happen? Every seller is going to increase the price of the house by $25,000. That's how it's going to go. That's what happened on the college campuses. Every time they increase the amount of loans that you can borrow as a student, the tuition goes up by that exact amount. So none of this is going to work. And I think she knows that, but the Democrats have long run on, here's your free stuff. We're the party of free stuff, whether it was the Obama phone back in 2008, Obamacare, which is going to pay for medicine for everybody, and we're going to become more like Canada. To her now with these nonsense proposals that when, as you point out, she was pressed on how she's going to pay for, because we're already, $35 trillion in debt. She just said, you just wait to see the return on investment. You just wait until like your kids grow up and they're somehow more productive. So it's like, wow, we're really going to play the long game. Because right now, those same kids are saddled with this 35 trillion and no one knows how they're going to repay it.
Yeah, this is such a boneheaded idea, as if some bureaucrats sitting in an office in Washington, D.C. are going to know what a carton of eggs or a gallon of milk should cost in Oklahoma. I mean, this is just, this is left-wing nonsense. And if actually implemented, her economic ideas would be a disaster for this country, would drive us further into debt. It would rise inflation significantly. But should any of this surprise us? No, it should not. Let's not forget, Kamala Harris is a hardcore left-winger. In 2019, she was the most left-wing senator in this country, more left-wing than Bernie Sanders. I mean, this was how she distinguished herself in the Senate. And then she chose a VP who's also a big left-winger. Waltz was in Minnesota. He was at the helm when he let the George Floyd rioters burn down his state and cities with impunity for months. It was a complete disaster, as was his entire time as governor. So should we be surprised that she's rolling out these plans, which, by the way, she has no plans for how to pay for any of this? Should we be surprised? Absolutely not.
She really is going full Bernie Sanders, and you never go full Bernie Sanders, and embracing what our border, basically communist price controls, the government deciding what grocery stores should be charging for loaves of bread and punishing them if they charge too high a price. It's ridiculous. It will not address inflation whatsoever, because the root causes of inflation have nothing to do with price gouging or corporate greed. Companies didn't suddenly get greedy in 2021. They've always been greedy. That didn't change. And two, grocery stores and the grocery industry, of all things in the US, run on a very tight profit margin of about 1.5% at most. So it's not like they're padding their profits with enormous profits. This is all political propaganda, and it's all being done while promoting economically illiterate, disastrous policies that almost every economist, even very liberal and democratic ones here in the US, think are absurd and could lead to shortages and economic issues like they did when we tried them in the 1970s. But you know what? It sounds good. Most Americans never took economics, don't know a lot about this stuff, and they just hear Kamala's going to be tough on corporations and stick up for you. I just hope people are smart enough to realize that just because something sounds good doesn't mean that it will actually work out well in the long run.
I think they learned a lesson last week. They released some details of their economic plan, which include what they call federal ban on price gouging. But when you looked at the details, it did not take very long, even for many left-leaning economists and political pundits, to point out it was essentially price fixing, price setting by the government, essentially the government telling private entities, private corporations what they could charge for their products. That's a pretty, you don't get much more left leaning than that. That's verging on socialism and communism. And I think the Democrats learned their lesson. They won't be putting out many more details. You're right, though, she will have to do some more exposure media-wise. She's agreed to 2 debates. Keep in mind, she's never debated at this level before. She's done 1 debate when she was running for vice president, but she's never done a presidential debate. Donald Trump has already done 6. So she'll be spending a lot more time, I think, prepping for that. I think the first one is early part of September.
Clearly, this is somebody who's about image and not about, a clearly thought through ideology of any kind at all, other than sort of let's be kind, let's be lovely, let's be great, let's be sort of soft socialist. No, look, she hasn't got a clue. Get her, as you say, get her off that teleprompter. She can't answer it. Economics, I don't know about running America's economy. She couldn't run a family budget with that sort of thinking. So no, September the 10th is a really, really big night.
She is the vice president right now. They call it the Biden-Harris administration because they're supposedly partners. So it begs the question, why haven't you done it yet? I think that's, and if she were to engage with the press, which she doesn't, I would hope that that question would come up. I mean, that to me is the simplest thing. The second thing that I find fascinating about this, and believe me, there's a lot more, but these are just the top 2. The second thing, though, is this is like an arsonist trying to take credit for putting out a fire that they started. It was their policies that created inflation throughout this country that drove the cost of living through the roof for so many people on essential things like food, bacon and eggs and milk and things like that, the essentials. They went through the roof, and now she's talking about, well, we need to have price gouging, whatever she wants to call it. The reality is, how about we just stop the bad policies that are creating these inflationary tools that are wreaking havoc on our economy? But it is unbelievable that she gets away with this, because you have to say to yourself, why are you waiting till day one when you're literally, your office is in the West Wing of the White House? Why have you not done it? Where is the partnership? You've championed Joe Biden in his policies, right? She keeps talking about how great Bidenomics is. Well, if it's that great, then why isn't it doing what it's supposed to be doing? Why do we need a new day one when you've been there for, 3 years?
She's going to say one really stupid thing and they're going to turn on her, because they already would have turned on her. There's so many stupid things to choose from. If you were that kind of voter, you already would not be in Kamala's camp. But I do think, if you're talking about those critical swing state voters, the ones you just mentioned, the tens of thousands, net, if she keeps speaking, they're going to be reminded that she is not a smart person. I don't care. I'm not trying to be ad hominem. I don't believe she's smart at all. And in no way is she a deep thinker. This I know. And she does not have good solutions. She has no solutions. She truly doesn't. She's all over the board. She really is a far left progressive who was literally raised by Marxists. That's what's influenced her policies. That was the true Kamala in 2019. And now she's learned enough to try to say she's more moderate, the Joe Biden plan for getting elected. I don't believe she is. So I do think over the next, 6 to 8 weeks, as early voting starts in mid-September, there's a very good chance that people are going to be reminded of how far left she is and how shallow intellectually she is.
Since her announcement as Joe Biden's replacement, the rebranding of Kamala Harris has been swift. Her team are hoping to detach her from the legacy of being Joe Biden's vice president and present a fresh and young alternative.
Well, it's funny because if you have no policies, then how could you say you possibly support her? If you go online, here's the thing. No one likes Kamala. No one liked Joe Biden. They simply hate Trump. The difference is you could ask the dumbest Trump supporters on the street, and they would probably at least give you 1 to 5 policies or things he's done that they like, at least a direction he's going. These are truly the most low IQ voters. They are only voting for her because she's not Trump. And the sad thing is, with the interviews, you're basically admitting that. And let's be real, the country, and they managed to destroy the country in 3.5 years, so I'm not sure what policy she's great. When she's talking about the price gouging and all these things, she literally is talking about communism. They're telling you to your face. She's not even able to do these things, but that is the direction they want to go. These people are socialists and they love communism.
Yes, we've seen a big change in the narrative from the Democrats since they have switched their nominee. Back when they had Joe Biden, they were making this race all about Donald Trump and what a threat to democracy he was. Now, it's almost like Trump isn't even part of the national conversation anymore. The Democrats have made it all about Kamala Harris and how great she is and how exciting a female of color as president of the United States. And they're really focusing on her and rebuilding her image and constructing her image and feeding that to voters via their allies in the left-wing media. So that's what this DNC will be all about, is building up Kamala Harris and then force-feeding voters the image of her that they want them to see.
As for Kamala Harris, I mean, this is all just platitudinous nonsense. We're going to save America. We're going to save democracy. It's a complete policy-free zone. She doesn't do media, doesn't present, just goes on stage and gets cheered because she's new and she's different. I can't wait for September the 10th. You know, we've known ever since Nixon v. Kennedy that in America, these presidential debates decide elections, right? But this one on September the 10th, I think really could decide who wins. Yeah, of course, she's got, huge media support. She's not Donald Trump. But what does she actually stand for? Is it the very leftist platform that she ran on back in 2019 when she went for the nomination and got almost nowhere? That, to me, is what this is now really all about.
It's amazing. Her ads are everywhere. Good luck going on the internet without seeing a Kamala Harris ad. I mean, they're everywhere. Every single video I click on, there she is. For the first time, I saw one for Trump yesterday. The first time. I don't understand why that wouldn't be in my feed, but it hasn't been. And I have to be honest, it was also long and rambling. It was the weirdest ad. It was just like Trump extemporaneously speaking. It wasn't disciplined or focused. I was like, get to the point, rather than skipping it after 5 seconds, I actually was trying to listen to it. Like, what is he trying to say to me? And once again, I'm like, my mind is wandering. What am I going to make for dinner? That's not a good ad. So yeah, I think she's blanketing the field because she had such a huge fundraising intake when she took over as the nominee. And Trump's got money too, but I don't think they're spending it on YouTube ads to the extent she is, at least. Now, in the critical swing states, I'm sure they are carpet bombing. I mean, sure, if my mother-in-law lives in Pennsylvania and my husband's from Pennsylvania, you can't go 2 steps there without getting bombarded with another ad. We know from 2016, one of the ways that Trump won so unexpectedly in 2016 was he had this campaign guru who he had hired from Ivanka's staff. He had been helping her hawk her clothing line online. And they're like, who can do digital? Oh, that guy. Okay, bring him on. And one of the things that he did that was really critical to Trump's win in 2016 was he started to look at the Trump merch sales and where they were going off the hook. And he realized there were these pockets of communities that really loved Trump that really hadn't been getting a lot of attention by the traditional electoral, experts who run these campaigns. And it turned out to be those forgotten voters, those people who never voted before, the working class who were like, screw the system. It hates both parties hate us. I don't vote. And they started flooding those areas with advertising. And that's one of the ways that Trump won, by getting those people off their couches into the polls. And so I can only hope they've fired that guy since then, that now they're doing the same. And so it wouldn't be particularly surprising that, yours truly sitting at the Jersey Shore, or when I'm home in Connecticut, neither state is in contention, wouldn't be getting messages from them. But the people who are actually going to make the difference in this election are.
I think it's actually pretty simple. I mean, most Americans, including most Democrats, don't know much about her at all. Those people who watch your show or my show, who are engaged in politics, I think have an understanding of her and what she has not done in her role. But for most Americans, she's a blank slate. And so if you're planning the DNC right now, your goal is to make people believe that she is something that she is not, which is somebody who's fighting hard for the American people, that she's not as extreme on the left as her record suggests. So, I mean, in a nutshell, I think part of this is to present somebody who is much more likable and palatable to the American voter.
Republican hopeful Donald Trump has had to pivot his election strategy in the wake of the Democratic candidate change. And as Election Day nears and polls shift, Trump is working hard to keep momentum in his pursuit of returning to the Oval Office.
Over on Team Trump, he's trying to get better at messaging. I have noticed an increased effort to keep pounding the things that work for him, and so that's good. He needs to continue that. And he needs to still be more message disciplined. You know, yours truly and many others had been saying he's been rambling and it's not working. He's losing his entertainment value, which is one of Trump's main selling points. And so what does he do? He goes out on the campaign trail and says, some people say I ramble. I don't ramble. I have to go on for 2 hours because people wait in line for days to get to see me. With all due respect, this election's not about those people. Those people are going to vote for Trump no matter what. Message discipline is about reaching the critical swing state voters who will determine the next president. So I like these people who go to these rallies. I know a lot of these people. But these people cannot have their wishes and desires to see Trump perform sated at the expense of the White House. So Trump needs to realize that and get back on message discipline. They've each got, some real weaknesses is what I'm trying to say as candidates, never mind on policy.
He needs to remain measured and basically point out exactly what the Democrats have done to destroy this country in every single way and just point at them and remind Americans of how life in this country has gotten worse in every measurable way with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden at the helm.
I've been one of the most open, public, and was one of the first people on the international stage to support Donald Trump. I'm going way back now, way before. He was there as president, and he's obviously become fixated. He was ready to fight against Biden, and he keeps mentioning Biden. And I just feel Trump needs to change gear. He needs to get away from talking about Joe Biden, maybe even talk about Harris a bit less. Where Trump wins is on policy. Where Trump wins is on conviction. Where Trump wins is on having the courage to take on things that others bury. And I think we need to see that from the Republican candidate. A Trump rally is as much about entertainment and an evening out as it is anything else. So, when he goes off on his tangents, let's be honest, it's often extremely amusing. And if you're there, it's quite something. The simple, direct, and memorable messaging. That's the point. Memorable messaging on energy bills, on filling up the car with gas, the term they use in America. Memorable messaging on the border and what he's actually going to do, and on crime in American cities. This is where Trump wins. People see him as a strong leader, but he needs to reconnect with the American public, with this messaging, and it needs to happen before the 10th of September. And then on that evening, we need to see that on policy, he's thought stuff through. And frankly, unless I'm wrong, I don't think she knows what she stands for at all.
When we fight, we win. God bless you. God bless the United States.
It is very possible we are going to be in a knife fight for the remaining 75, 80 days that we have to go. This is extremely razor thin, as have been the last two elections. This further is in that regard. But I think what you're putting your finger on there, Shari, is key, which is this is about issues all day and all night long. It's about the issues. Immigration is a top 2 issue in the country for good reason. When you look at just the quantum and what's been going on both illegally and legally, Trump has historically always been very, very strong on that issue. It was his signature issue that led him to victory in 2016 and a very close call in 2020. So that is a winning issue for him. But the question is he going to be able to get cut through on that? And is Harris going to be able to distance herself from that track record under Biden so far with avoiding the press and taking the approach that she's taken? It seems to be working. And that's kind of her strategy. Can she run out the clock and sort of wash her hands of the immigration issue, or will Trump be able to pin it on her?
I don't expect anything that dramatic, but then again, we didn't expect anything that dramatic in the first place. But yes, in this compressed time that we have in our elections, and I know you folks are very used to short elections, 5, 6, 8 weeks, whatever it is in Australia. Here it's 2 years, but we don't have that this time around. We effectively have a 90-day race. I think there's 78 or 80 days left until actual election day itself. So it's a very compressed timeline. That will make things like the debates even more dramatically impactful on the outcome of this election. So, look, there'll be some Democrat, positive attention in the media this week. It always is during the convention. Then we have our Labor Day holiday, the end of the summer bank holiday weekend, and then we get into the heavy-duty campaigning in September, and the debates are right there.
If we've learned anything in the last few months, a lot can change in a short period of time. From an assassination attempt on a president to a last-minute candidate change for the Democrats, top Hollywood writers would struggle to write this plot. And now, as we enter the last 70 days of the campaign period, only time will tell if Kamala Harris will be the accidental president.